Your cat isn't biting you because it's mean. It's biting you because you've been taught the wrong thing about what that bite really means. We tend to blame the behavior without ever questioning the misunderstanding that created it. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that biting is just a part of living with a cat, instead of a message we haven't learned to read. Once you see the hidden pattern behind those sudden nips, everything starts to make sense. In a moment, I'll reveal the tiny adjustment that often ends this problem more gently than people expect. And if this kind of clarity helps you breathe a little easier, consider sticking around for more. Chapter 1. Why Cats Bite and What Owners Misinterpret. Why does a creature that spends so much time seeking your warmth suddenly turn around and bite you, as if something inside them flipped? It's unsettling because it makes you question your bond for a moment, even though the truth is rarely about anger at all. When a cat bites, it's almost always trying to say something in the only language it has, and most of the time its message begins long before the teeth ever make contact. You start to notice how many small signals you missed. The twitch of a tail, the stiffening of shoulders, the quick glance away that was never meant to be ignored. And when those whispers go unnoticed, the bite becomes the only thing loud enough to get your attention. So the real confusion isn't in the bite itself, but in the silence that comes before it. And that silence can quietly shape the way you and your cat learn to trust each other. Chapter 2. The 5 Types of Cat Bites. A strange truth most people never hear is that not all cat bites belong to the same story. And once you realize that, you start seeing how the confusion you felt before was really just a mix of very different messages tangled together. Some bites come from a place of instinct, almost like your cat is practicing a hunt it never gets to finish, while others surface only when your touch becomes a little too much for their nerves to hold. Then there are the moments when fear takes over, and your cat lashes out because it feels cornered, or the times when something else in the environment overwhelms them, and they turn their frustration onto whatever is closest. The hardest bites to witness are the ones rooted in pain, because they often carry the quiet plea we don't recognize until much later. And when you finally see these patterns for what they are, your cat's behavior stops feeling unpredictable and starts feeling like a conversation you're just learning how to understand. Chapter 3. The Hidden Risks of Cat Bites. There's a quiet comfort in believing a small bite is harmless. And the benefit of letting go of that belief is that you finally start protecting yourself the way you deserve. It's easy to shrug off those tiny punctures because they look so clean, almost too neat to be dangerous. But the real trouble hides beneath the surface where you can't see it. You don't realize how quickly bacteria can settle into those narrow wounds until the redness spreads or the ache deepens in a way that feels out of proportion to the size of the mark. And by the time swelling shows up or warmth radiates from the skin, you're left wondering how something so small became something your body can't ignore. What makes it even trickier is that many people feel embarrassed to take a cat bite seriously, as if seeking care means overreacting to a pet they love. And when that hesitation lingers even for a day, the wound can quietly turn into something that needs urgent attention instead of simple reassurance. Chapter 4. The Critical Socialization Window. You can almost picture a tiny kitten tumbling across the floor, batting at a sibling's tail, and then freezing the moment the play goes too far. In those early weeks, your cat is learning rules it can't explain, but will spend its entire life following. And those lessons shape how gently or intensely it uses its teeth. When a kitten stays with its family long enough, it discovers the limits of pressure through soft corrections and short pauses that teach it how to hold back. But when that time is cut short, the kitten grows into an adult who never fully learned how to modulate its excitement, so even affectionate moments can spill over into something sharper. What surprises many people is how much progress an adult cat can still make when you become the one offering the calm boundaries it never received. And once you see that these early gaps don't define your cat forever, it becomes easier to meet them with patience instead of frustration. Chapter 5. Why Punishment Fails. The uncomfortable truth is that punishment almost never teaches a cat what you think it does. You might raise your voice or pull your hand away sharply because the sting of the bite startled you, but to your cat, that moment blurs into a flash of noise and fear with no clear meaning attached. And if more than a few seconds pass, Your reaction simply becomes another unpredictable human behavior they learn to brace against. What begins as an attempt to correct a problem quietly transforms into a cycle where your cat feels tense around you, and that tension makes biting more likely, not less. It's unsettling to realize that fear can disguise itself as obedience in the short term, giving you the illusion that something worked when it actually chipped away at trust. And once you understand how fragile that 3-second window is, you start to see why so many well-meant corrections end up creating the very habits they were supposed to fix. Chapter 6. Technique 1. The instant redirect. Most people assume the problem starts in the moment your cat bites, but the real turning point begins a few seconds earlier. When your cat grabs your hand with that sudden burst of energy, it isn't trying to hurt you so much as releasing something it doesn't know where else to put. And if you watch closely, you'll notice how quickly that excitement flips from playful to overwhelming, almost like your hand became the nearest outlet for a feeling that rose too fast. That's why shifting the focus onto a toy right away feels less like training and more like giving your cat a safer path for all that instinct. The beauty of this tiny redirect is that it teaches your cat, without fear or frustration, that your hands aren't part of the game, but your presence still is. And over time, as you reward those calmer choices, your cat begins to reach for the toy automatically, turning what once felt chaotic into something that finally makes sense. Chapter 7. Technique 2. Structured play sessions. You can picture it so clearly. Your cat crouched low, pupils wide, body quivering with that electric mix of excitement and frustration that has nowhere to go. And in that moment, it hits you that so much of their biting comes from energy they've had to hold inside for far too long. When a cat doesn't get the chance to chase, stalk, pounce, and claim a victory, all that instinct quietly builds until it spills into your hands or ankles instead. But something shifts when you make time each day to guide them through a play routine that actually satisfies the rhythm their body was designed for. Those sessions become more than entertainment. They become a release, a grounding, a way for your cat to feel seen in the deepest part of its nature. And after a while, you start to notice the sharpness fading from their interactions with you, replaced by a kind of soft, calm presence that only emerges when their needs have finally been met. Chapter 8. Technique 3. Reading signals and withdrawing. Have you ever noticed how a cat can go from melting into your touch to pulling away in a split second, as if you crossed a line you didn't know existed? That moment feels confusing because nothing dramatic changed on the surface, yet something subtle inside your cat shifted. If you slow down enough to watch, you'll see those tiny cues. The flick of a tail, the way their ears angle back, the slight tension spreading through their back, that quietly warn you their nerves are nearing the edge. And when you honor those signals by pausing before the bite happens, you show your cat that you're listening, which softens their need to defend themselves. Stepping away for a few minutes isn't rejection to them. It's a reset, a chance for their body to return to calm, so affection can feel safe again. And as you gently rebuild these moments with shorter, more mindful touches, your cat begins to trust that you won't push past their comfort, making every future interaction just a little easier to share. Chapter 9. Integrating the 3 techniques. It's tempting to imagine each technique working on its own, but the truth is they only reach their full strength when they overlap. You start to see how a well-timed play session softens the tension that once turned harmless moments into sudden nips, and how a quick redirect gives your cat a way to express excitement without involving your skin. Then, almost without noticing, you realize that reading their signals ties everything together, because it prevents the very overwhelm that used to undo all your progress. What feels like 3 separate skills becomes one steady rhythm. Release the energy, guide it safely, and honor the boundaries before they're crossed. And when everyone in the home follows the same gentle approach, the confusion that once fueled the biting slowly fades into a sense of predictability your cat can trust. But if the intensity lingers despite your patience, it's a quiet sign that something deeper might be asking for help. Chapter 10. Real-world case transformations. You can almost see Luna on the couch, leaning into a soft pet before suddenly whipping around with a sharp nip that left her owner wondering what went wrong. What changed her wasn't force or frustration. but simply learning when her body had taken in all the affection it could and needed space to settle. Thor's journey looked different, full of wild bursts of energy that had nowhere to go until play and redirection finally gave his instincts a path that didn't involve human skin. And then there was Misha, whose bite seemed to come from nowhere until the tension in her environment eased, and she no longer had to carry the weight of every sound and shadow. Each story had its own shape, but they all moved in the same direction, once understanding replaced guesswork, and patience replaced fear. And the peace these owners found wasn't just in fewer bites, but in the gentle, steady bond that formed when their cats finally felt understood. Chapter 11. Emergency Protocol for Cat Bite Wounds. Have you ever wondered why a bite that looks like nothing can start hurting in a way that feels completely out of proportion just hours later? That uneasy feeling comes from the way cat teeth create narrow, deep punctures that trap bacteria where you can't easily clean them. You might rinse the surface and feel relieved for a moment, only to watch the skin grow warm or tender as the hidden part of the wound starts to react. And when the bite lands on your hand or near a joint, the risk grows quietly, because those areas leave very little room for swelling or infection to spread safely. That's why taking a few slow minutes to wash, press, clean, and then pay attention to how the area changes can make far more difference than most people realize. And if you're someone whose body has a harder time fighting infections, or if something about the wound just feels off, listening to that instinct and getting care early can protect you long before the situation becomes urgent. Reaching the end of this journey, you might feel a little lighter, knowing your cat's bite was never a rejection, but a moment of overwhelm they didn't know how to express. The fact that you've stayed open enough to learn says so much about the kind of home you're offering them. And the real gift here is understanding that even imperfect moments can become stepping stones toward deeper trust. When you bring that awareness into your everyday interactions, something subtle begins to shift between you and your cat. And once you notice that, you start paying attention to the quieter ways your cat chooses to share space with you. There's a surprising reason some cats settle just close enough to touch, but not quite touch you, and it reveals more about their heart than their habits. If you'd like to see that side of them more clearly, we can take that next step together.